once you have academic sources, uh, books and articles, identified, what you have to do is you have to find a way to evaluate them in terms of their relevancy and reliability. Not every source that you will come across will be equally relevant. Not will be neither would it be reliable. So you just have to be selective and in terms of finding the most relevant and most reliable sources and prioritizing them. And typically what happens is that with the thesis research, just like in everything else, time constraints are crucial. So that means, you have to be selective. You can't read, you can't pay same amount of attention to every source you come across. You have to be selective and focus on the most relevant and most reliable one. But how do you identify relevancy of source? Let's start with a book. Let's say that you have a book and let's say you have a couple minutes to decide whether that book is relevant for your research. A couple of things. First, you check out the title. If the title seems to be relevant or not. Then look at the table of content and look at the specific chapter titles. And if those titles make you think that this could be a relevant book. Look at the introduction. Quickly, just skim it and just look at the chapters and the first page of chapters. Just quick skimming, and then look at the conclusion. Again, quick skimming. Look at the like subject index, and if the keywords and phrases that best describe your research focus show up in that index, you can sort of be confident that that book is relevant for you. Or journal article. That's another sort of important source. You look at the title, you look at the abstract, you skim the introduction, you sort of check out the subtitles and headings, and then you look at the conclusion, to figure out how relevant the journal article is. Again, you don't have to read the entire source to be able to establish the relevance of the source. You have to be quick. You have to be strategic and sort of identify this, specific details. Quickly take a quick look at those details, and that will be enough for you in terms of establishing relevancy. And typically what I do is I sort of at the initial stage of my own research, I go over, I try to identify as many sources as possible, and I sort of categorize them in terms of their relevancy. I assign to them stars, the most relevant being 5-star, the least relevant being sort of 1 star. And then I go back and read these sources with more attention paid to the sources with a greater number of stars because I want to be selective in what I read. Another issue is reliability and credibility. Not every source will be equally reliable or credible. And so there are a couple of signals that you can sort of rely on, you can use to identify the credibility or reliability of a printed source quickly. Again, let's say you have a couple of minutes to establish if a source is reliable or not. A couple of things. First of all, the author. If the author is a renowned author, then that usually is an indication of author's quality of the work and credibility of the work. If you don't know the author, maybe authors institutional affiliation. Let's say Harvard professor writing on your topic. The chances are good that the quality of information you find in that, the quality of analysis you will find in that source is high. Again, it's not guaranteed, but the chances are high. Also, you look at the publisher. Who is the publisher of the source? Typically, university presses they go through a very rigorous process, review process, and so then to make sure that information that they publish, the analysis that they publish is sound. And so you look at the reputable publishers, how reputable the publishers are, and you can figure that out from your professors, or you can just like do Google search, like the most prestigious, the most important publishers in your field, and that way you can sort of establish overall credibility, reliability of your source. Again, be selective. Focus more on credible and reliable sources, than those that are like whose reliability or credibility is suspicious. The big question is how about online sources? Whatever you find online, like how do you assess, sort of evaluate their reliability? It's a bit tricky when you sort of deal with online sources. Of course, with a website, let's say, you sort of have to be careful in about using information analysis on a website. First, you have to make sure that for example, the website is maintained, is up to date. It's clear who is maintaining the website. Make sure that the website doesn't make vile claims and attack other researchers, use abusive language, makes errors of spelling, punctuation, and grammar. And so if you see those like issues like errors of spelling, punctuation, grammars, language is inflammatory, like abusive, you may want to sort of avoid that site and be careful about the analysis or information provided on that site. Again, the bottom line is you will come across a number of sources, academic sources in your literature search, but you can't just you have to be selective. You have to pay attention more to those sources that you find relevant, credible, and reliable. Okay, once you find a relevant, reliable, or credible sources, you have to figure out how to engage them systematically and effectively. And that requires a significant degree of being critical, sort of not just reading sources and registering the content of the source in your brain, but also reacting to it. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? And you will come across sources that you agree with, and you can use that as a stimulus for your original thinking. Okay, I like the argument of this book. I like the main conclusions, and I find the conclusions, the findings of the book sort of convincing. Then the question is, can I use this? Can we apply these conclusions and findings into other cases? Can we interpret it in a different way? So always ask this, engage and challenge source, even the ones that you agree with, that you find convincing, and think about how you can extend that source analysis, or can apply the findings or conclusions of that source to other cases, for example. Or let's say that you read a source that you disagree with, and you can use that as a stimulus for your original thinking. Okay, then think about why is it that you don't agree with that source? Why is it that you don't like, you're not convinced by that source? Always engage in this kind of a dialogue with the source you read. Agree, disagree, like, dislike, what you read, but not just be a passive reader, reading and registering, but also questioning, criticizing, and evaluating, what you read. That's the key to the effective systematic engagement of a source, not just reading, but also sort of critically engaging the sources you read. A critically important part of engaging sources systematically and effectively is knowing how to take notes. You have to know how to take notes systematically, effectively. You need to create a template for note taking. Don't just read, but also take notes. Use post-its, and you need you take notes on your maybe on your notebook, or just on a Word document. Make sure that you create a template, a format, specific a template to use when you read different sources. Make sure that you keep a record of the bibliographic information of the source. And again, everybody has a different way of doing it, but if careful note taking is key to engage in engaging sources systematically and effectively. You have to know when to summarize, when to paraphrase, and when to quote your sources. Summarizing is when you present overall conclusion or finding or point of a source in your own words. So make sure that you have a summary for each and every source you have. It is a quick summary of what the source is about, its main focus, its main findings, its main conclusions in your own words. And if you try to summarize a source in your own word, that would enhance the level of engagement that you have with that source. Paraphrasing is, let's say that there's a specific piece of information in the source, and and you want to use that piece of information, from that specific part of the source, but you think that you can present in your own words that is more appropriate for the purpose of your own analysis, for the purpose of your discussion. And when you do that, it's called paraphrasing, taking a piece of information from a source, and presenting it in your own words. When you do paraphrasing, make sure that you get the page number of that, for that piece of information, exactly what from which page you extracted that information, even if it is in your own words. And quotation is, they say that the source makes an original claim or says something in a very striking way, and also they say that you don't agree with the source and you want to do justice with the source. And quotation is like you're taking a piece of information from a source, again keeping the original language in the source. You don't change the wording. You keep the original wording, again using the quotation mark. When you do that, it's called quoting. Summarizing is about the entirety of the source, what the source is saying in general. Paraphrasing and quoting is like taking a specific piece of information, specific part from the source. In the paraphrasing, you use your own language. In the quotation, you use the original language of the source. And in the paraphrasing quotation, you have to make sure that you have page numbers written down or taken. And when you take notes, make sure that whatever information you're writing down, like you need to find a way to identify whether it is a summary or paraphrasing or quotation, and that would help you in terms of avoiding inadvertent plagiarism, which is a common issue, unfortunately. With careful note taking, you would make sure that you will be guarded against inadvertent plagiarism. For example, in my own note taking, I use different font size, different font colors to differentiate summaries from paraphrase and quotation, so that when I go back to my notes, I know which part of my note is paraphrase, which part of my note is quotation, and which part is a summary. Once you effectively engage your sources, and of course you have to report your sources accurately, it is very, very important that you have a accurate, full, and appropriate recording of your sources. And make sure that you keep all the bibliographic information, and so again you report, you provide details of this information at the end of your research. It's all about your credibility, and so if you don't have that, it significantly hurts the credibility as a researcher and the persuasiveness of your analysis. And there are a lot of important details, of course, title, author, publisher, for journals, volume, issues, for books, like publisher, location. Again, you have to keep details, and we usually encourage our students to do sort of a Chicago style. And so again, please study citation styles that you use, the style that you're using, and then sort of carefully make sure that you have all the relevant information recorded, and then present it at the end of your analysis. That's all for the literature review. Next, we're going to move to review of exemplary thesis from past. Thank you.